In conclusion, let's address several final speech-related concepts. Prior restraint means that government may not censor before publication. The first notable case in which the Supreme Court ruled on a prior restraint issue was Neer v. Minnesota in 1931. In that case, the Supreme Court held that prior restraints were unconstitutional, except in extremely limited circumstances such as national security issues. The ruling came about after J. Neer's newspaper, the Saturday Press, a small local paper that ran countless exposés of Minneapolis's elected officials alleging illicit activities such as gambling, racketeering, and graft, was silenced by the Minnesota Gag Law of 1925, also known as the Public Nuisance Law. Neer's critics called his paper a scandal sheet and alleged that he tried to extort money, threatening to publish attacks on officials and others. In the Neer case, the Supreme Court held that the state had no power to enjoin the publication of the paper in this way, that any such action would be unconstitutional under the First Amendment. In one of the most famous prior restraint cases, New York Times Company versus the United States in 1971, popularly known as the Pentagon Papers case, the Nixon administration sought to enjoin the New York Times and the Washington Post newspapers from publishing excerpts from a top-secret United States Defense Department history of the United States' involvement in the Vietnam War from 1945 to 1971. The leaks led the Nixon White House to begin its campaign of domestic spying, including the break-in of Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office to obtain files from this file cabinet, and ultimately to the break-in of the Democratic Party's headquarters at the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. The government tried to use the national security exception that had been suggested in Neer v. Minnesota. The Supreme Court struck down the injunctions. However, the decision was fragmented, with 9 separate opinions being filed in the case.